Hi, and welcome to the bar, where we make awesome cocktails inspired by history. Like this one. This is smoky goodness. Like a barbecue revolution in a glass, and was inspired by the brash group of men and women who turned a territory that would be claimed by 6 nations into a state, then into their own nation, then back into a state again. So come on. Let's go behind the bar and make this small cocktail with flavor as big as Texas. This is the Lone Star, and tells the history of the Texas Revolution in a glass. A tale of strong leaders who were trying to find their place in the world and were willing to push the boundaries, bend the rules, and even go to war to get the outcomes that they wanted. Bending the rules to get what you want. Sounds a lot like college, right? Or tax season. Now, when one crafts a drink based on the history and culture of Texas, a lot of things comes to mind. Perhaps too much. But with a history so vast and intimidating, I decided to focus on something simple but delicious: Texas barbecue. Each ingredient is inspired by the major players involved in the fight for Texas's independence, coming together to tell the tale and taste amazing. Now, speaking of bending the rules, by a show of hands, how many of us have had an online dating profile? You, in the back, come on, don't be shy. Let's be real. We're not exactly 100% honest on those, right? We show our best and we hide our worst. This is true with online dating profiles and with 19th century land grabs that led to the Texas Revolution. You see, it all started with a single man, Moses Austin, who negotiated a deal with the government of New Spain to emigrate along with 300 families from the United States to settle in the land of Tejas, or as pronounced in English, Texas. Sounds simple, right? Not so fast. A year after conducting negotiations with New Spain, Moses passed away, leaving Stephen F. Austin, his son, to take up his mission. Austin's bold personality is what brings us to our first ingredient, sweet tea moonshine. Now, I'm using American-born moonshine, and this is bold and brash, a lot like Austin's personality, but is smoothed out by its sweetness, much like Austin's sweet-talking, charismatic diplomacy helped push the Texas Revolution forward. Now, this is as good a leader for our cocktail as Austin was for our revolution. For our cocktail, we're gonna put in 1.5 ounces. Perfect. However, the rules changed again when Agustin de Iturbide, a general in the Mexican government, led the fight against their Spanish rulers for Mexican independence, and the government of New Spain fell. Shortly after taking over, Iturbide's government passed the Imperial Colonization Law and subsequent provisions, which abolished slavery and sought to invite Catholic immigrants to settle in the new nation. Everything Moses had done was now toast. With their original deal with Spain now dead, Stephen was left to work with this new law to fulfill his father's dream. Sure, there were some bumps on the trail to freedom. Like a cash-only business owner filing his taxes, Austin didn't exactly tell the government everything. First, him and his 300 families weren't Catholic. They were Protestant. Second, they had slaves, and they weren't too keen on leaving them back in the United States, so they brought them with them. But other than that, they were following the letter of the law completely, unless they were audited. Due to their small populations, the Mexican government decided to combine the states of Texas and Coahuila into one. This didn't sit well with Austin, who decided that perhaps if they could increase their population in their state, they could regain their autonomy. This prompted a Texas land rush in 1825, where more non-Catholic, slave-owning immigrants flooded in. So, like a desperate entrepreneur whose only credit on LinkedIn was as a thought leader of his own business, Austin traveled to Mexico City, met with the 1830s version of Mexican Shark Tank. i.e. the Mexican vice president, and made his pitch, expressing Texas's grievances and the benefits of outside-the-box Texan independence thinking. After listening to his impassioned plea and considering his plan, the shark said, "Estoy fuera," or "I'm out." Did that end Austin's quest? Hell no! Austin had gonads the size of the land he claimed as his own. And if he couldn't get statehood for Texas through official routes, well then he was going to do the next best thing. By circumventing the federal government and writing to the municipal government in San Antonio, suggesting a declaration of statehood anyway. What was the worst thing that could happen? Well, he was arrested and imprisoned for 2 years. Come here. Now, when people talk about the Texas Revolution, there's normally 3 names for the people that were referred to as Texans. There's the Texans, the Tejanos, and the Texians. The Tejanos were the Hispanic inhabitants, or Mexican natives, that lived in Texas who wanted independence. The Texians were Stephen F. Austin's clan and all of the subsequent Anglo-American immigrants who also wanted independence. But they came together to fight for Texas independence, their own nation, under the name Texans. Now, everything changed again when in 1833, Generalissimo Santa Anna rose to power and abolished the Federalist government and replaced it with a centralist structure. Generalissimo Santa Anna's power grab by the blade of a sword and the powder of a musket is what leads us to our second ingredient in our drink, mezcal. Now, with all mezcals, they're usually made in Mexico and are all made from the blue agave plant, similar to tequilas. But where tequilas are made from the base of the blue agave plant, these can be made from any element of the blue agave plant. This one particularly, Mezcal Sacrificio Reposado, is made with the leaves of the plant that are smoked over mesquite wood and then is aged for about a year in oak casks, which gives us a nice slight amber color, mellows out some of the harsh smoke, but this element is what is going to really transform our drink into that barbecue taste we're looking for with that signature mesquite wood, which we know is in a lot of Texas barbecue flavor. Plus, with the smokiness of this particular liquor, I feel like it fits so well with the personality of Santa Anna, considering that he had a tendency for violent suppressions of his own people. So we will put in a ½ ounce in here. Perfect. And you don't really want more than a ½ ounce or it's really going to start to overpower everything. There we go. Once Santa Anna had Mexico under his control, he set his sights on that troublesome state of Texas. And the game keeps changing, you have to adapt, right? Like with social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, you learn the rules and you figure out how to use it to your own advantage. But we all know that social media isn't real life, but the life you want others to see. Like, some people claim to be influencers, or rich, or a mixologist that bases their cocktails on history. But only one of those is accurate here. In our online world, oftentimes narrative is more important than truth, the story more powerful than facts. Like at this point in Texas's history, the fact is that Santa Anna was trying to reclaim his land. The narrative that Stephen Austin was selling was that Santa Anna's tactics were an invasion of their sovereignty. And Stephen's half-truth went viral. Texas was now fully committed to armed resistance against Santa Anna's regime. Hi! Now before I go on, if you guys enjoy our cocktails and love learning about the history that inspired them, but you don't like reading books, then subscribe and let me do the work for you. Now the first encounter of the war occurred in the small town of Gonzales, over a cannon. The Mexican government dispatched Colonel Ugartechea to repossess the cannon that was loaned to the town for defense against Comanche attacks. But when he arrived with 100 dragoons, they were met with stiff resistance by Texans who were flying the flag, "Come and take it," with the image of the cannon under it, which actually inspired this. The Texans pushed the dragoons back and won the skirmish, engaging in the first shots of the Texas Revolution. Santa Anna, the maker of the rules, determined to teach Texas a lesson, amassed an army of 8,000 men to besiege the town of San Antonio. William Travis, Jim Bowie, and Davy Crockett, along with 200 other volunteers, stood to defend the Alamo. Santa Anna attacked, and Travis, along with those who fought with him, perished trying to defend the Alamo. This was a heavy blow to the aspirations of Texan independence, but not all improbable narratives are false. For example, some people are as rich and talented as they claim. Some influencers do reach millions of people. Some mixologists / historians' crazy cocktails do taste amazing. Confident after his victory in San Antonio, Santa Anna continued to confront Texan forces, searching for an opportunity to put an end to the rebel militia, which was now led by Sam Houston. And it's Sam Houston that brings us to our next ingredient, brandy. Specifically, Christian Brothers brandy. Now, I love using this brandy in my cocktails because it does a great job of being able to bridge the gap between very strong flavors in a drink. For example, we have very smoky mezcal and very sweet and potent moonshine. This is going to do a great job of balancing the rather intense flavors of these two liquors while not diluting any of the alcohol whatsoever, especially because we're going to be putting this on the rocks and then stirring, which will do our dilution anyway. For our cocktail, we're going to put in 1/3 of an ounce. Now, the other reason that I actually decided to use Christian Brothers brandy is because, similar to Sam Houston, he does a great job of being able to balance between our two major personalities in the story, Santa Anna and Stephen Austin. And he's able to bridge the gap between those two forces, those two visions, and be able to finally put us on our way towards the end of our story, similar to how the brandy is putting us towards the end of our drink. Now it's time for us to add some rocks and finally be able to give this a nice stir. There we go, that's enough. It all turned into one rock for me, but we had to separate it. And now we stir. This will help awaken some of the hidden flavors that are in the brandy and of course also in the moonshine. But at the same time, it will also really smooth out our really potent flavors. Now that that's all done, let me just get my strainer, grab that, and finally, we pour into our rocks glass. Now, the loss at the Alamo could have been the death knell for Texas independence, but it actually ended up being their war cry toward victory. In the Battle of San Jacinto, Houston, chanting "Remember the Alamo" to his 900 soldiers, turned to face Santa Anna's pursuing army of 1,300 head on, and he took them by surprise. The battle lasted a mere 18 minutes, and the Texans took out their revenge. 630 Mexican soldiers were dead, 730 were captured, and 280 were wounded. Texas lost only 9, yes, only 9 men, and had 34 wounded. Santa Anna, who had escaped the battle initially, was tracked down the following day where he agreed to recognize Texas's independence. The Treaty of Velasco, signed on May 14, 1836, ended the war between Mexico and Texas. Well, mostly. The treaty was violated multiple times on both sides. Turns out Mexico didn't fully recognize Texas's independence until the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed after the ending of the Mexican-American War, where Texas, which was once a state, then its own nation, became part of the United States of America. And this inspires our last surprising ingredient to finish out our cocktail: candied bacon, standing in our drink like a flag on the field of victory. The Lone Star not only captures the essence of the Texas Revolution, but also reminds us of that delicious Texas barbecue that is so iconic. And it reminds me of freedom, just a little bit. Let's have a taste. Oh yeah, absolutely sublime. It is smoky, up front, and then it really starts to amp up in the back end. You get that sweet tea flavor that is wonderful with pretty much all Southern cooking, especially with barbecue. And it's balanced out by that brandy. It really does a great job of just bridging these two gaps so that we have a balanced drink. Neither the sweet tea moonshine nor the mezcal is overpowering the other. And it is such a wonderfully balanced, tasty drink. Very sweet, very boozy. I'm in love with it. Oh, and this candy bacon's to die for. Whether it's in the drink or you just make it at home, it's incredible. We actually have the recipe for both this drink and the candied bacon at our website at topshelfhistory.com. Please check that out. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Absolutely fantastic. But from all of us here at Top Shelf History, remember that history is better with a drink.